Gallipoli wasn't just a war film. It was a national reckoning disguised as entertainment. A multi-million-dollar myth-making machine funded by media royalty, and a movie so controversial, it ignited international outrage for rewriting history to blame the wrong people for one of warfare's most catastrophic blunders. Behind the sun-baked landscapes and devastating final charge lay a production fueled by family legacy, historical manipulation, and artistic obsession. The movie launched Mel Gibson to stardom, gave cinema its most powerful depiction of mateship, and sparked a controversy that refuses to die 4 decades later. Today, we're charging across no man's land to reveal 10 weird facts about Gallipoli, and stick around for a bonus fact about the sacred object that started it all. Number 10. The film rewrote history. The most damning criticism of Gallipoli erupts not from film critics, but from historians who rage that Peter Weir committed cinematic vandalism against historical truth. The film depicts the catastrophic Battle of the Neck as the fault of incompetent British commanders, with Colonel Robinson ordering wave after wave of Australian soldiers to their deaths while British troops allegedly sat on beaches drinking cups of tea. It's powerful. It's heartbreaking. It's fundamentally wrong. The real villain wasn't British at all. Colonel John Antill, an Australian brigade major, bears primary responsibility for the disaster. When Lieutenant Colonel Noel Brazier protested that the attack was nothing but bloody murder, Antill overruled him. Brigadier General Frederick Hughes, another Australian, shares the blame. Historian Les Carlian writes bluntly that the scale of the tragedy of the Neck was mostly the work of 2 Australian incompetents, Hughes and Antill. The film's portrayal sparked fury from British historians and veterans groups who accused Weir of anti-British propaganda. Weir later admitted regret, explaining that Robinson was indeed based on Antill and wears an Australian uniform, but his clipped accent causes viewers to mistake him for British. The controversy reveals how powerfully cinema shapes collective memory, overwriting actual history with emotionally satisfying fiction. Number 9. Rupert Murdoch's personal mission. The film wasn't just another production, it was a blood debt paid in celluloid. In May 1980, Rupert Murdoch and Robert Stigwood formed R&R Films specifically to produce Gallipoli. It remains the only film the two titans ever produced together, born from Murdoch's deeply personal connection to the campaign. Rupert's father, Keith Murdoch, became a legendary figure in Australian history for exposing the Gallipoli disaster. In September 1915, the journalist spent 4 days on the peninsula and wrote an 8,000-word dispatch, an amazing document, a mixture of error, fact, exaggeration, prejudice, and the most sentimental patriotism, according to Philip Knightley. The letter contributed to General Ian Hamilton's recall and the campaign's evacuation. Keith Murdoch became a national hero, launching a media dynasty his son would transform into a global empire. For Rupert, producing Gallipoli wasn't commerce, it was legacy. The Sydney premiere was deliberately scheduled exactly 66 years after the Battle of the Neck. Rupert escorted his mother up the red carpet, while his father's photograph appeared prominently in Murdoch-owned newspapers. The film embodied the Murdoch family mythology, the crusading journalist exposing incompetent British leadership, the sacrificial Australian troops betrayed by colonial masters. It was personal, it was propaganda, and it was the only time Rupert Murdoch would produce a theatrical film. Number 8. The Eno Bottle Discovery. The film's genesis wasn't a pitch meeting, it was a mystical experience. In 1976, Peter Weir traveled to Turkey after finishing Picnic at Hanging Rock. He spent 2 days alone on the Gallipoli battlefield, wandering through trenches still visible 60 years later. Then, in Shrapnel Gully, he found something that stopped him cold, an unbroken bottle of Eno's fruit salts, a common laxative carried by soldiers. The glass gleamed in the sun, perfectly preserved. I felt somehow I was really touching history, Weir said, and it totally altered my perception of Gallipoli. I decided then and there that I'd make the film. The experience was profound, almost religious. Weir kept the bottle as a talisman during production. The film even includes a reference. The shop proprietor lists items for sale including Eno's fruit salts, directly echoing Weir's discovery. This wasn't research, it was communion with the dead. Weir approached Gallipoli as his graduation film, stripping away clever tricks to create something emotionally pure and devastating. The Eno bottle represents everything the film became: a physical connection to history, a meditation on mortality, a sacred object linking past and present. The movie exists because a director touched an object a dead soldier once held and felt history surge through his fingertips. Number 7. The casting gamble. The chemistry between Frank and Archie defines Gallipoli, but the casting was a calculated risk based on a radical theory about audience identification. Mel Gibson, fresh from Mad Max, wasn't obvious for a period war film. Mark Lee was a complete unknown who had never carried a major film. He had Mark Lee, the angelic-looking, ideal Australian kid, Gibson explained, and he wanted something of a modern sensibility. He thought the audience needed someone to relate to of their own time. Mark Lee embodied everything Australians romanticized about their Anzac forefathers. Blonde, beautiful, earnest, pure-hearted, Gibson represented doubt. His Frank Dunn is pragmatic, skeptical, motivated by friendship rather than patriotism. Weir cast Gibson specifically because he wasn't the archetypal Australian. The director wanted audiences to enter the story through Frank's modern eyes before being swept into Archie's tragic idealism. Mark Lee's casting came from an even stranger source. He wasn't auditioning, just came in for a photo session. Weir saw him and immediately recognized the special quality we had combined in Archie. The contrast worked because both actors fully inhabited their roles. Without Gibson's modern doubt, Archie's sacrifice feels hollow. Without Lee's idealistic purity, Frank's anguish lacks meaning. They needed each other, just like the film needed both energies to work. Number 6. The controversial music. One of the most divisive elements erupts during the running scenes. The pulsing, synthesized rhythms of Jean-Michel Jarre's Oxygene. Released in 1976, Jarre's groundbreaking electronic album sold over 18 million copies. Weir's decision to use it in a World War I film strikes many viewers as bizarre, anachronistic, even wrong. The film's original score was composed by Brian May, but Weir chose to accompany the running sequences with Jarre's electronic pulse. The choice was deliberate. Weir wanted energy, modernity, a sense of youthful exuberance that classical music couldn't provide. But the juxtaposition feels jarring. How can futuristic synthesizers accompany a 1915 story? Film enthusiasts have debated this for decades. Some call it incongruous. Others argue the music invests the running scenes with timeless energy. Weir didn't commission original music. He simply licensed existing tracks from Oxygene, layering time periods like geological strata. The anachronism becomes a feature, not a bug, a reminder that we're watching a contemporary filmmaker's interpretation, not a documentary. For quieter moments, the devastating finale, Weir chose Albinoni's Adagio in G minor, creating emotional architecture, youthful energy obliterated by ancient sorrow. When you hear Oxygene, you think of running. When you hear Albinoni, you think of death. Together, they create whiplash that devastates audiences. Number 5. The $60,000 unplanned scene. Midway through shooting, with the schedule locked and budget tight, Peter Weir made a decision that cost an extra $60,000. He wanted to add an elaborate farewell ball scene that existed nowhere in the approved script. The sequence, soldiers and their dates dancing in a gorgeously lit ballroom, wasn't planned, wasn't budgeted, wasn't written. It was pure directorial instinct, and it became one of the film's most memorable moments. The farewell ball captures everything Gallipoli understands about the gap between expectation and reality. The young men are immaculate in their uniforms, proud and excited. Johann Strauss waltzes play. It feels like a celebration, an adventure beginning. No one in that ballroom understands what's waiting on Turkish beaches. The scene drips with tragic irony. We know these beautiful young men are dancing towards slaughter, but they see only glory ahead. The $60,000 expenditure, more than 2% of the film's $2,600,000 budget, required convincing producers and securing additional funds. The gamble paid off spectacularly. The ballroom became iconic, frequently cited as one of the film's most powerful moments. It works because Weir understood that Gallipoli needed breathing room, moments of beauty before carnage. The ballroom scene epitomizes that strategy. We fall in love with these boys precisely so their destruction will hurt more. And let's face it, go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're about to reveal the secrets that even hardcore fans don't know about this film's production. Number 4. Building a Turkish peninsula. Gallipoli couldn't be filmed at Gallipoli. By 1980, the actual peninsula was covered in pine forests that hadn't existed in 1915, and the Turkish government restricted access. Weir needed to recreate the Anzac battlefield, and production scouts fanned out across Australia searching for matching topography. 30 miles west of Port Lincoln, on the Eyre Peninsula, they discovered Farm Beach, a stretch of coastline with the perfect combination of steep ridges, narrow valleys, and exposed beaches. The terrain matched Gallipoli's geography so precisely it could pass for the actual location. The art department built elaborate trench systems, constructed Turkish fortifications, and dressed the landscape with period debris. The South Australian locations proved perfect for another reason. They captured the vast, empty, harsh quality Weir wanted to contrast with claustrophobic trenches. The Egyptian sequences showing the 3rd Light Horse training near the pyramids were shot on location in Cairo. This created a travelogue structure, Australia to Egypt to Gallipoli, that traces the soldier's journey while showcasing three distinct desert environments. Cinematographer Russell Boyd's work earned him an Australian Film Institute award. The Farm Beach location became so identified with the film, it's still known as Gallipoli Beach today. Local residents erected an Anzac war memorial near the site. The production's construction of a fake Gallipoli that feels more real to millions than the actual location speaks to cinema's strange power to supplant reality with convincing fiction. Number 3. The Freeze. Frame homage. The final image, Archie Hamilton frozen in mid-air, arms flung back, body arched, caught at the precise moment bullets strike, is seared into memory. The freeze frame isn't just emotional punctuation, it's a deliberate homage to one of the most controversial photographs in war journalism history. Peter Weir modeled the shot after Robert Capa's The Falling Soldier, captured during the Spanish Civil War in 1936. Capa's photograph allegedly shows a Republican militiaman at the instant of death, frozen in that terrible transition between life and death. The image became one of the most famous war photographs ever taken, though its authenticity has been questioned. Regardless, The Falling Soldier defined how we visualize death in war. Sudden, balletic, frozen. Weir instructed cinematographer Russell Boyd and editor William M. Blank /End of You Anderson to capture and freeze Archie's death in that same iconic manner. Mark Lee's final sprint shows him running with pure athletic grace. Machine gun fire erupts. His body jerks backward, arms flung wide, suspended. That's the instant Weir freezes. Archie caught between running forward and falling dead, between youth and extinction. The freeze frame does multiple things simultaneously. It spares us literal impact while maintaining emotional devastation. It creates a memorial image, transforming Archie into a monument. It references cinema's relationship with death, how film captures and preserves moments. The choice to end on a freeze frame was controversial, but it proved masterful. The frozen image becomes eternal. Archie perpetually dying, forever suspended. We never see him hit the ground. He stays airborne, trapped in time. It's a kind of immortality, horrible and beautiful simultaneously. Number 2. The budget crisis. Before Rupert Murdoch and Robert Stigwood rescued the production, Gallipoli nearly died when its original major backer pulled out. The South Australian Film Corporation had initially supported the project, but as David Williamson's screenplay evolved and the proposed budget climbed toward $4,500,000, the SAFC grew nervous about commercial viability. Their withdrawal threatened to kill the project entirely. The SAFC's concerns centered on structure and appeal. Early drafts attempted to cover the entire Gallipoli campaign from 1914 through 1915. This sprawling approach created budget-busting ambitions and narrative diffusion. Weir later explained, "Our first approach was to tell the whole story, but we were not getting at what this thing was. The burning center that had made Gallipoli a legend. The solution was radical simplification. Simply made up a story about two young men. This narrowed focus reduced the budget to approximately $2,600,000 but made the SAFC nervous without epic scope. Would audiences care? The corporation's withdrawal forced the team to seek backing elsewhere, which led to the Murdoch-Stigwood partnership. R&R Films brought not just money, but prestige and distribution muscle. The May 1980 funding deal gave the film resources and creative freedom the corporation couldn't match. The irony is that the SAFC's rejected version might have produced a completely different, possibly inferior film. The constraints pushed Weir toward the intimate character focus that makes Gallipoli emotionally devastating rather than historically educational. The film won 8 Australian Film Institute awards, grossed over $11 million domestically, and became one of the most beloved Australian films ever made. The SAFC's cold feet forced a creative breakthrough that saved the film from mediocrity. Number 1. A career saved. For Peter Weir, in 1980, Gallipoli represented a desperate gamble to resurrect a career that had stalled. 4 years earlier, Picnic at Hanging Rock made Weir an international sensation, but the follow-ups, The Last Wave and The Plumber, failed to expand his commercial reach. By the time Weir proposed Gallipoli, he needed a hit to prove he could deliver mainstream success without sacrificing artistic integrity. The pressure was immense. Weir had been developing the project since his 1976 pilgrimage, but it kept evolving, resisting easy solutions. The director called it his graduation film, suggesting he viewed it as a crucial test of his maturity as a filmmaker. He would strip away the surrealism that characterized his earlier work and create something emotionally direct, accessible, devastating. The production became a masterclass in controlled intensity. Weir demanded perfection while maintaining spontaneity to add expensive sequences mid-shoot. He drew career-defining performances from his cast. He navigated the historical sensitivity of depicting Gallipoli for Australian audiences who held the campaign as sacred national myth. The critical and commercial success vindicated Weir's approach completely. Gallipoli swept the Australian Film Institute Awards, dominated the box office, and earned Weir his first taste of Hollywood attention. More importantly, it announced him as a filmmaker capable of emotional devastation without manipulation. The film launched the next phase of Weir's career, the year of Living Dangerously, followed by Hollywood's success with Witness, Dead Poets Society, The Truman Show, and Master and Commander. Each bears DNA from Gallipoli, the examination of innocence destroyed, the critique of institutional authority, the meditation on masculine friendship. Without Gallipoli's success, Weir might have remained a cult director rather than becoming one of cinema's most respected humanists. The film saved his career by proving he could work within commercial constraints without surrendering his vision. Bonus fact: The Lost Romance. In David Williamson's early screenplay drafts, the story was fundamentally different. The most significant excision was a romantic subplot involving Archie Hamilton and a young woman he plans to marry. This storyline gave Archie's death an additional layer of tragedy, not just the loss of life and friendship, but also future domestic happiness, children never born, a love story cut short. Weir made the radical decision to eliminate the romance entirely and make the central relationship the one between Archie and Frank. This shift reinforced the film's crucial theme of mateship, the uniquely Australian concept of male bonding that supposedly defined the Anzac experience. Rather than splitting emotional investment, Weir concentrated everything on the male bond. Frank becomes Archie's most important relationship, the person who tries desperately to save him, whose anguish at failing defines the film's emotional climax. The elimination also removed conventional melodrama. War films often include doomed romances, tearful farewells, letters from home. By removing them, Weir made Gallipoli feel more honest, less manipulative. Archie's motivations stem from patriotic idealism and his bond with Frank, not from impressing a girl or returning to a lover's arms. The decision to focus on male friendship rather than heterosexual romance was controversial in 1980. Some producers worried American audiences wouldn't connect with a film where the central emotional relationship was between two men. Weir stood firm. When Archie dies, we mourn not just his individual loss, but the destruction of his friendship with Frank. The Lost Romance reveals how dramatically Gallipoli evolved from conception to final form. Williamson's early drafts attempted conventional narrative structures. Weir's revisions stripped them away, leaving only the essential story of two young men and their journey toward tragedy. That ruthless simplification created a masterpiece. Gallipoli endures not just as Australia's defining war film, but as a testament to how cinema shapes national identity and collective memory. Its legacy is complicated. The film consecrated myths about British incompetence that historians denounce, yet it captured something true about sacrifice, friendship, and the terrible waste of war. The film reminds us that our most cherished national myths are often constructed by artists working under pressure, shaped by commercial constraints, and filtered through contemporary concerns rather than historical accuracy. Weir's Gallipoli tells us more about Australia in 1981 than about Turkey in 1915, yet it feels more emotionally true than many documentaries. That paradox defines great historical cinema. The way powerful storytelling overwhelms factual precision, the way a freeze frame of a fictional character becomes more culturally significant than photographs of real soldiers. What makes Gallipoli unforgettable isn't its accuracy, it's its devastating sincerity. Weir believed in Archie and Frank's friendship with religious intensity. He poured his spiritual experience on Turkish battlefields into every frame. He fought for expensive ballroom scenes and controversial music choices because he trusted his instincts. The film changed Australian cinema, launched international careers, and created a pilgrimage site on a South Australian beach. It made millions weep for two fictional characters and, through them, for the 8,709 Australians who actually died at Gallipoli.